Stranger Things, Season 5, Volume 2 has given us a lot to process, but as we've come to expect from the Duffers, every answer seems to come with 3 more questions attached. Here is every major unanswered question still lingering after Volume 2. Let's start with the biggest revelation of the volume. The Upside Down isn't actually an alternate dimension at all, but a wormhole connecting Hawkins to something Dustin calls the Abyss. This changes everything we thought we knew about the show's mythology, but it also raises so many questions. If the Upside Down has always been a wormhole, why does it look like a frozen version of Hawkins from 1983? Dustin's explanation tells us that the Demogorgons and Mind Flayer come from the Abyss, but it doesn't explain why the wormhole specifically mirrors Hawkins' architecture and geography. I'm betting there's something about Eleven's powers or Will's disappearance that literally shaped the wormhole into this form, like their consciousness or fear imprinted on it when it first opened. It would explain why it's stuck on that specific date. Speaking of the Abyss, we know basically nothing about it beyond the fact that it's where all the monsters come from. What exactly is this place? Is it just a hellish dimension full of creatures? Or is there some kind of society or structure there? How long has Vecna been connected to it? And what was he doing there during the year between when Eleven banished him and when he started his killing spree in Season 4? The show has introduced this massive new element to its mythology without really explaining what it means for the bigger picture. My theory is that Vecna didn't just stumble into the Abyss, he was drawn there because it's essentially a dimension of psychic energy, which is why his powers work so well with it. He's basically found his ideal power source. Then there's the whole reveal about how Eleven and the other lab kids actually got their powers. Kaylee tells Eleven that it wasn't drugs at all, but Henry's blood that Dr. Brenner used to create them. This is a game-changing revelation, but it opens up a whole can of worms. If Terry Ives was injected with Henry's blood while pregnant with Eleven, does that mean other mothers were too? How exactly did Brenner get Henry's blood in the first place, and how much experimentation did it take to figure out the right formula? The flashback shows pregnant women dying from Kaylee's blood, which means Dr. K is trying to restart the program but failing. Why doesn't Kaylee's blood work the same way Henry's did? I think it has something to do with Eleven being a second generation. She's uniquely powerful because she has Henry's blood, and she was born with abilities, whereas Kaylee was created. Eleven might be the only one whose blood could actually work for creating new powered individuals. The whole situation with Holly and the other 12 kids raises a bunch of questions too. Vecna needed exactly 12 children for his ritual to merge the Abyss with Earth, but why 12 specifically? Is there some kind of numerological significance, or does the ritual require a specific amount of psychic energy that 12 kids can provide? And what exactly was that black liquid being fed into them through the tentacles? My gut says this liquid is some kind of corrupted psychic essence from the Abyss itself, meant to turn the kids into conduits or anchors for the merge. The reveal about Will building tunnels for Vecna while possessed is heartbreaking, but it also raises questions about what else Will might have done without knowing. He tells Joyce that he was Vecna's builder and that he was working on the tunnels every night while he slept. But we saw those tunnels in Season 2, and they were massive. How long was this going on, and what else did Vecna make Will create or do? More importantly, now that Vecna says he plans to use Will as a spy again, does that mean Will is still connected to him in some way? Can Vecna still access Will's mind whenever he wants? The fact that Vecna specifically wants Will as a spy again makes me think Will's connection to the hive mind is more permanent than we realized. He might be the only person who can move between the Upside Down and the real world with that kind of access, making him incredibly valuable to Vecna's plans. Steve's beanstalk plan is classic Stranger Things in that it sounds completely insane, but everyone goes along with it anyway. The idea is to let Vecna start his ritual so the Abyss gets close enough for the radio tower to pierce through, then climb it like a beanstalk to get into the Abyss. But what happens if they can't stop the ritual in time? How close will the two worlds get before it's irreversible, and what's the actual mechanism of the merge? Does the Abyss physically overlay Hawkins, or does something else happen? I'm worried this plan is too risky and someone's going to get stuck in the Abyss when they blow up the exotic matter bridge. The timing would have to be absolutely perfect, and we know how these plans usually go. Callie's suggestion that she and Eleven should sacrifice themselves by staying on the bridge when it explodes is dark and raises huge questions about whether that'll actually happen. Is Callie right that this is the only way to permanently stop the cycle? She believes that even if they blow up the lab, Dr. K will just build a new one with a new version of herself, continuing the experimentation forever. But is sacrificing themselves really the only solution? Or is Kali being overly pessimistic because of her trauma? And would 11 actually go along with this plan? Hopper would never allow it, but what if 11 decides it's the right thing to do without telling anyone? I think Kali is wrong about needing to sacrifice themselves, but I do think one of them might choose to stay behind anyway. Kali has less to live for than 11 does, and it would be a powerful redemption arc for a character who's been pretty cynical up to this point. The fact that the show is even putting this option on the table is terrifying. 11 has been through so much, and she deserves a happy ending with Hopper and Mike and her friends. But the show has always been willing to make brutal choices, and 11 sacrificing herself to save everyone would be thematically appropriate. She opened the gate, so she closes it forever. I really hope this doesn't happen, but I can see the Duffers thinking it's a beautiful, tragic ending. Mike would be absolutely destroyed, and honestly, so would the entire fan base. The flashback to young Henry killing a man in the tunnels is disturbing and raises all kinds of questions. Who was this man with the briefcase and gun? Why did he shoot Henry in the hand? Was this some kind of government agent or scientist who was tracking Henry? And what was in the briefcase that Henry opened? The show makes a point of having Holly watch him open it, which suggests whatever's inside is important. Could it be documents about experiments, or maybe something that helped Henry understand his own powers? This feels like it could be connected to how Brenner first found Henry, or how the government first became aware of powered individuals. That briefcase might contain information that explains the origins of the whole program. Dr. K continues to be a mysterious figure we still know very little about. She's clearly obsessed with restarting the program using Kali's blood, and when that doesn't work, she wants 11's. But what's her ultimate goal? Is she just a true believer in Brenner's work, or does she have her own agenda? And how much does she actually know about Vecna and the Upside Down? She seems to understand more than she's letting on, especially with how she's been managing the Max Z facility. I think Dr. K might actually be in communication with Vecna somehow, or at least aware of his plans. She's too prepared for everything that's happening for it to be a coincidence. The whole mechanics of Vecna's mind layer and how it works still aren't entirely clear. Max and Holly can move through Henry's memories, which makes sense since they're in his mind. But then Max gets strangled by Vecna in his mind layer, and her physical body in the hospital starts dying. So there's a direct connection between what happens in the mind layer and the physical body. But how does this actually work? Is it psychic damage that manifests physically? Or is Vecna literally reaching across the connection to affect their bodies? And if Will can tap into Vecna's consciousness and hurt him enough to save Max and Holly, why can't 11 do the same thing more effectively? I think the mind layer is more than just a mental space. It's actually a real location in the abyss that Vecna has shaped with his consciousness. That would explain why physical rules seem to apply there. Holly's portal situation at the end of episode 6 is super weird and raises questions about consistency. Max tells Holly she can't come with her through the portal, and Holly needs to find her own way home using something meaningful to her, not necessarily music. Within minutes, Holly realizes her Holly the heroic figure is meaningful enough, and boom, another portal opens. This feels way too convenient and raises questions about how these portals actually work. Can anyone escape Vecna's mind layer if they just think of something meaningful? Why didn't this work for Billy or any of Vecna's other victims? The show really fumbled this moment. It makes all the previous deaths feel arbitrary if escaping is actually this easy. There needs to be some explanation for why Holly and Max could do this when others couldn't. Maybe something about them being in the mind layer longer or learning its rules. The reveal that Holly wasn't actually in the Upside Down but somewhere else entirely is confusing. Dustin says Brenner's journal from 1983 suggests Holly is in a different location, and then we see her in Vecna's desert mind lair before she falls through a crack back into the Upside Down. So where was she actually? Is the mind lair a separate space from the Upside Down, maybe located in the abyss? And if so, how did she physically fall from it into the Upside Down? The geography of all these different spaces and how they connect is getting really complicated. I think the mind layer exists in the abyss, floating above the Upside Down wormhole. That's why Holly could physically fall from it into the Upside Down. She was literally falling through dimensions. If that's true, then the Mind Layer might be Vecna's actual home base in the Abyss, and what we've been seeing as his lair in the Upside Down is just a projection or anchor point. That would mean when 11 goes into the tank to fight him, she's not just entering his consciousness, she's literally traveling to the Abyss through a psychic connection. That raises the stakes considerably, because if something goes wrong, her mind could be trapped there permanently, just like Max was. And if the bridge collapses while she's there, she might not be able to find her way back to her body at all. Ultimately, Volume 2 has set up an incredibly complex final battle with multiple moving parts and way too many opportunities for things to go catastrophically wrong. Whether it succeeds or not, we won't know until the final episode drops, but one thing's for sure, it's going to be an emotional, probably devastating, definitely unforgettable ending.